Good evening, everyone. I and Shreya would like to welcome everyone for the 29th session today, featuring the very bold book, Batla House by Shri Karnal Singh. He's a very, very familiar name in India's law enforcement community. He is the former Chief of Enforcement Directorate, a post which he retired in 2018. Karnal Singh, sir, is a 1984 batch IPS officer, and he's an engineer from the Delhi College of Engineering and the IIT Kanpur. He has over 34 years of experience in the investigation of corruption, terrorism, money laundering, and criminal cases. In the Delhi Police Special Cell, he spearheaded the investigation of the 2008 Delhi blast cases, which led to the Batla House encounter. In fact, sir is the recipient of the President's Police Medal for the Distinguished Service and Police Medal for the Meritorious Service. The book Batla House, which has been published by Rupa Publications, is the minute-by-minute detail on the encounter that shook the nation. And it is a trailblazing account of the encounter from the officer who spearheaded the operation in Batla House. So we are really, really privileged to have sir today, who will actually recount chilling moments of the famous encounter today, apart from his tales about everything else. Welcome, sir, on the Trends platform. It is such a moment of pride for us.
Thank you so much.
So just before I ask you your first question, I would like to tell all of the viewers that this book is a definite must read, and it is dedicated to martyr Inspector Mohan Sharma and countless other policemen who make small and large sacrifices on a daily basis. So, sir, I've seen a lot of your interviews and you've conveyed many times that the truth needed to be told, and, all the variety of public perception that was there, and that's why this book needed to be out there. Why do you say that, and why do you think the book had to be written, even though already there are countless other books around such issues, and of course there's a movie as well. So what is your opinion about that?
See, I penned down this book because I wanted to tell about how difficult it is to investigate the terror-related cases and what are the difficulties faced by the police officers who deal with the terrorism, whether it is of a special cell or of any anti-terror unit all over India, or it is NIA, National Investigating Agency. I also wanted to depict the excellent investigation done by the special cell in unearthing the Indian Mujahideen terrorist. The second question you asked about that it is important to tell about the truth. See, in life, perception is very, very important. And perception can be built on untruth. And perception appears to be the people more real than the reality. And therefore, it is always important to tell the truth, what happened at that particular point of time, so that people have the informed opinion about things. In this particular case, the various inquiries were conducted. The National Human Rights Commission conducted the inquiry and found the encounter to be genuine. The issue was then went to the High Court and then went to the Supreme Court. And it was settled that it was a genuine encounter. Then there was an investigation done by the unit other than the special cell. In this case, the investigation was done by the crime branch, and crime branch submitted its report to the judiciary where the judicial scrutiny is done. In spite of that, even after passing of 12 years, more than 12 years since 2008, the controversies are being raised many times, and that we see in the media. It comes from certain political circles or some other places. So I wanted to tell the people what happened during the course of encounter and thereafter, so that people can form their own opinion.
So I was just saying that I think this is the main reason sir is very right, that everyone should go and read the book, because it is from somebody who was on ground himself, and this would be the first reality and the first truth. So sir, next I would like to ask you about the fact that of course you've dedicated your book to martyr Mohan Chand Sharma, and he was a special cell inspector with the Delhi police. He was a highly decorated police officer, and he was even posthumously awarded the Gallantry Medal. So if you could tell us a little bit about him and his contribution in this mission, and how you feel that, you know, after all these years was, he was awarded the medal.
See, Mohan Chand Sharma not only had received a number of gallantry medals, he was also a recipient posthumously of the Ashoka Chakra.
Right.
It was received on the Republic Day in 2009 by his wife, Miss Maya Sharma. He was very, very intelligent officer. His investigating skills were par excellence. For example, even in the Batla House case, we got two inputs from Gujarat police. The first input from the Gujarat police was that the terrorists belonging to Indian Mujahideen had used 3 phone numbers, and there was no calls on these numbers from outside, no calls made from these numbers to the outside. And these numbers were with various other agencies. It is not that the special cell had those numbers. Mohan Chand Sharma, while examining those numbers, he found that there was a 1 second call from a number to these numbers. That was the only call which came from outside. Generally, what happens is when a call you receive and you just cut that call without receiving it, the call CDR of that phone indicates the 1 second call. And most of the people ignore it, considering that it was not a call which was received. But Mohan Chand Sharma went into inquire into that and was able to find out that this number was belonging to somebody from Lucknow. And from Lucknow, there were calls to some number in Delhi in the Batla House area. So that was first doubt he has got. The second information which came was on 18 September 2008. And it was that 13 people, after causing planting blast in Ahmedabad, traveled by Rajdhani Express to Delhi. Now he was able to piece these two information and was able to pinpoint that possibly person living in L18 Batla House could be responsible for the blast. So it was his excellent investigating skills. Secondly, he was a great leader. See, when Batla House took place, on one day prior to, on 18th night, I came to know that his son was seriously ill, was in hospital, and he was struggling with life and death. I asked him that he can opt out. He should be at that time with his son. But he said, no, the nation is more important for him. See, that shows his commitment to the country, commitment to the nation, commitment to the society. And certainly he was one of the best officer of Delhi police.
So that rightly so, sir, you have dedicated the book to him, and he deserves all the praises because what he did for the country was amazing. So a lot has been talked about that. I'm coming to him again, that Mohan Sharma was not wearing a bulletproof jacket at that moment of time. And a lot of hue and cry was made later when he was killed, and we all know what happened later. So why do you think he was not wearing a bulletproof jacket at that moment of time? And what do you think about it now after all these years, 12, 13 years which have passed?
See, if you see the topography of that area, any outside person goes there would be immediately spotted. When the search was to be conducted, we were not sure that we could find those people there. We may not have to find these people there.
Right.
Now, if you go with the bulletproof jacket, now let me explain you, bulletproof jackets are worn outside your shirt and all. It is not like in some picture shows that it is inside. It weighs around 6.1 kg. If you wear that and go at any place, you will be spotted from a distance. And everybody know that the police has come there in search of somebody. And if suppose at that time the terrorists or suspected terrorists were not there, and they come to know police had come, you will not be able to catch them. These people had been causing explosions from 2005 onwards, killing more than 239 people, injuring more than 750 people. Your raid has to be success. And therefore, if you remember, one of the officer was in the guise of Vodafone executive. They were all in plain clothes, because if suppose raid fails, if suppose people are not there, the police can withdraw from that place without anybody knowing that police had come there. So this Mohan Chand Sharma took calculative risk, and he took the risk of the life, one can say, in the hindsight. I consider it to be that he took a brave step, knowing that he's going to a place where terrorists could be there, knowing that if things go wrong, you never know what can go wrong at any point of time, because even if you plan everything, you do not know how the other party is going to react, what situations are there. It was his commitment to his duty, his commitment for the nation, that he was not wearing the bulletproof jacket, and it was his decision to take on the terrorists.
Amazing, sir. In fact, this book, which is divided into 3 parts. First, it is the story of the Batla House, then the controversy, and then Indian Mujahideen. But the way you've come together, you've strung together all the facts together. That is the reason why we should all read this book and really find out all the nitty-gritties of the biggest talked about encounter in India's history. So what do you think, sir, was the first trigger that made this encounter so controversial? Not only amongst the public, but also among the political circle at that moment of time. I still remember all the news which kept pouring in, all the doubts which kept on coming in. You're the best person to tell us what was the first trigger, the way it happened, the way Batla House turned into something else altogether. A genuine effort from the police, and there were so many controversies surrounding it.
See, this encounter took place on 19th September 2008. And from November onwards, there were elections in the country, in the assembly elections, in 5 assemblies. And in early 2009, there were parliamentary elections. A section of politicians took this as an opportunity for vote bank politics. And when the politician says something, it creates a perception. That was the number 1 reason. Secondly, it was strange that media started picking up rumors. Rather than doing investigative journalism, finding the truth, they just picked up rumors and started speaking. For example, in one of the paper which was submitted to the High Court also, the writer says that he found eyewitness. And that eyewitness has seen everything, what happened inside the flat, what happened outside the flat, from his bathroom. Then it goes on to say that Mohan Chand Sharma got 3 bullet injuries from the front within few millimeters, few centimeters, as per the post-mortem report said by them. And therefore they concluded that it was a friendly fire. And they also said that there was no fire from the other side. The media said that he got 3 bullet injuries from the back. The post-mortem report says only 2 bullet injuries, that also from the front and more than 12 feet away, not from this so close range. Secondly, what happened is in the All India Medical Institute of Sciences, when the post-mortem was done, the doctors took hand wash of the terrorists. Now, when somebody fires from a gun, the gunpowder sticks to the hands. So that hand wash was sent to the CFSL, And CFSL report came that, yes, there was a gunpowder in the hand wash, clearly indicating that they had fired. So depicting wrong postmortem report. Postmortem report says something. The people are saying something else, is giving a wrong perception to the public. And therefore, I have mentioned in my book this very clearly, that what was the findings of the postmortem report, what was the findings of the CFSL report, and what were the findings of the National Human Rights Commission.
So I would just like to ask you, you talked about how, different rumors were reported in the media. So, and we saw that with respect to recently all the political news happening, and we obviously have seen a lot of fake news going around, and also with respect to security issues, specifically the Mumbai blast and how misreporting was taken place. So what do you think can, be done to prevent this from happening, from media to, spreading fake news and all these rumors, specifically when it comes to a security issue? So what do you think? And do you think the level at which the rumors and fake news are spreading nowadays, was that the case back in 2008 as well?
See, the most important thing is media has a responsibility towards its viewers.
Mhm.
And media is supposed to present the correct report. What happens is that there is a communication gap between investigating agency and media. And that communication gap gives opportunity the people to fill up the gap. And that gap is sometimes filled up with rumors. Therefore, the investigating agencies should share whatever is possible without having any effects on their investigation. Secondly, media should also try to find out, do proper investigative journalism to find out the truth. Let me tell you one thing, that the investigation is not affected whatever media is saying. Even in this particular case, we were able to get sufficient evidences. The evidence is in the form of even from the pen drive of one of the terrorists. We found a video clip of a cycle on which there was a bomb planted in, it was a scene of Jaipur. It could not have been with anybody else because that bomb has exploded subsequently. We also found the number of bombs placed in the form of I and M. And on the back of that, it was written Indian Mujahideen Ahmedabad in Gujarati. So enough material was found from there to prove that the investigation was on the right track and there were evidences against them. And when you have evidences, the police has evidences, they could be able to tell what is the truth.
So very rightly said. I've also heard that, handling media either side is very difficult. Even it seems that you mentioned, I think, and I heard you in one of the interviews when you said that Indian Police Academy also has these courses now where they are supposed to be finding out the ways or learning the ways to handle media. So it must be a very, very big challenge with you being the, head of enforcement directorate, that what to tell the media and what not to tell them. And then the public gets it all wrong. So how were you placed at that? What to divulge and what not to divulge?
See, it's a very delicate area.
Yes, sir.
Because if you divulge something which can adversely affect your investigation, that is not good for investigation.
Right.
But if you do not divulge to the media what is required to be divulged, then media can fill that gap with their own rumors, or I can say their own thinking, what is possible, what they are doing. So this has to be properly understood. The passage of time, the investigating officers understand with their experience that what should be shared and what should not be shared. But it is always important that if training is imparted to the officers, and that training comes from the other officers who have experience of handling the media and sharing what should be shared with the media, like I said, that National Police Academy, Hyderabad, has started this training for the officers.
Yes, sir.
Similar training, I feel should be done for the media personnel, that what should they show and what should not they show on their media.
So we had a session by Mr. Sandeep Unithan, who was the executive director, executive editor of India Today. And that is also what he mentioned, because, as a media person, and he wrote this book, State of Siege, the Black Tornado, which was on 26/11 attacks in Bombay. So the same, media really hyped up the case, and they really faced a lot of problems, what not to divulge and what to divulge to the public. So I can understand your viewpoint. It is definitely very, very difficult. So your book also talks about TADA, which is the Terrorist and Disruptive Activities, and POTA, which is the Prevention of Terrorism Act, and their eventful journey. And now, as we all know, that both the acts have elapsed. So do you think these acts are really important to combat terrorism, or maybe the acts similar to them?
See, prior to TADA was enacted in 1985.
Yes, sir.
We were dealing with Section 121A of Indian Penal Code, which is waging war against the state, and certain other acts like Explosive Substance Act. But the question is, you are dealing with terrorism.
Yes.
And therefore, terrorism also, the terror financing is there. The member of terrorist organizations are there. But that doesn't come under 121A about terror financing and all these things. The law is required to deal with the various situations of handling terrorism. The other countries have come up, like after 9/11, US come up, various other countries have come up with the laws to deal with terrorism. In India, somehow I find it is a knee-jerk reactions, which I mentioned in my book. Like Mrs. Gandhi was assassinated in October 1984, and in 1985 we got the TADA.
Yes, sir.
There were certain allegations against misuse of TADA by certain organizations. And therefore, in 10 years later, 1995, it was allowed to lapse. Then we have parliamentary attack. And immediately thereafter, we got POTA. And that was again allowed to lapse. Then we have but this Indian Mujahideen cases and 26/11. And we got amendment in the Prevention of Unlawful Activities Act to deal with various issues of terrorist activities. We also got National Investigative Agency after that. Still, there are certain legal lacunas. For example, today we do not have undercover operations legalized. If suppose my officer entered into a terrorist organization to get all the things in that terrorist organization, and if that officer is caught by some other agency, they may not listen to me, because there is the undercover operation is not legalized in India. See, we should see that what all is required to deal with terrorism, and we should take care of that. Now, if certain law has been misused by certain officers, they should be taken to task. Not the law should be allowed to lapse or law should be repealed. The question is instrument and usage, implementation. If implementation is wrong, whoever is doing wrong implementation, he should be taken to task. But the law should remain there.
Very, very rightly said, sir. I totally understand this. And I feel that whatever we can do to combat terrorism in India outside, we should do, because we have a very, very good police force and a special cell. And I think whatever we can do to help them and understand them better. I think you've taken a very good initiative by writing this book and writing the unknown stories about what the special cell has done for the country. I think books like these are really going to help in bridging the communication gap. So, but I would really like to know as to what you were thinking when this encounter, you being at the helm of the affairs, when it was being labeled fake. There's been a lot of news. There was a lot of news running around that it was being, people were thinking that it was a fake encounter. And the police was questioned about its motive like never before. Being on the ground and facing the brunt of this investigation, what were your feelings at that moment of time? And what were you thinking? That we are making all the efforts, we are doing everything we can, and this is what is happening. It is being declared fake, and people are talking all kinds of things about the killing of Mohan Chand Sharma. So, what were your thoughts? What was the thoughts running in your mind at that moment of time?
See, it is really very painful. You lost one officer, and another officer got bullet injuries. And the third officer, because he was wearing bulletproof jacket, he survived. Otherwise, bullets would have killed him also. And people are trying to take advantage of the situation for the vote bank politics. But we have to work. And we have to prove whatever other people are saying is not correct. Evidences are very, very important in particular, whatever you are investigating. You can put and get across everything if your investigation and evidences are right. In this particular case, I have written in my book that one day, Lieutenant Governor rang me up saying that you come to my house, and Mr. Kapil Sibal, who was a minister at that time, would like to discuss with me about this case. I went with the evidences with me which were available. And Mr. Kapil Sibal, I sat across. Lieutenant Governor was sitting on the side. He did not speak. He did not utter a word. It was a more than 1 hour interaction with him. And he came out with newspaper clippings first. You explain me this. I explained him. I made a map of the area, showed him how the police people entered, where all people were there. And when I replied to all, then I told him that I want to show you some evidences. I had taken the laptop in which the pen drive I put and showed him the evidences. And he felt convinced that yes, there are sufficient evidences to indicate they were terrorists. And there were reasons to explain what was coming in media. And therefore he told me that yes, he was convinced and he will convey it to the Prime Minister. So there is no substitute to the evidence. Even if you have pain, even my subordinates sometimes came to me, which I mentioned in the book also, that what is this happening? I told them that our only savior is the work we do, the evidences we collect, and evidences we put forth before the public and the judiciary. That's the only savior of a police officer. And it proved out to be true.
Hats off to you and your force, and how finally everything got so clear. But sometimes I find these confusions which also must be touching you. For example, one thing which really strikes me and has always been a point of confusion for me when I was keeping in touch with the Encounter way back in 2008, about this fact that the mail which was sent out to the media by Indian Mujahideen had warned that the serial blasts will take place at a particular time. But one of the blasts took place maybe 5 minutes earlier. So incidents like this, how do you prepare yourself? Of all these the communication is being done, but it happens before that. So how do you handle such things?
See, one thing is the terrorists were giving this mail to indicate that how powerful they are, basically. And one has to also understand there were different groups operating. The mail was prepared by one group, was to be put and sent to the media by another group, and third group was operating. Last moment, they have no coordination with them. Now, what happened in this particular case is the person who had gone to the Karol Bagh to plant the bomb, he went in auto. He happened to reach earlier. And after reaching there, he could not have stayed there for a longer time. So he left the bomb and it exploded early. You have to work hard to deal with such situations. Because what happens is this Indian Mujahideen, which has been operating since 2005, they were causing explosion after explosions. They started with Banaras, they did with UP courts, they did in Hyderabad, they did in Bangalore, then Gujarat, Rajasthan, and Delhi. Now, we have to work against time. And that's why I have written the special cell people. They work round the clock. It is not a question of hours. They forget their families. They are in the office day in and day out, because they know if they fail, there would be another blast. There would be people killed. And therefore, they require to devote totally into the case they are working on. And that is a specialty of the people who are handling anti-terrorism.
Amazing, sir. Kind of self-restraint and the kind of work you have done and your team has done and they continue to do is really something which is quite overwhelming and quite emotional.
I agree. I think it's amazing the amount of work that the police has to undergo to be able to solve all these problems. I think we can move on to our interactive round, but just before that, I have one last question, sir. You are an engineer and a career police officer, head of enforcement directorate, and now an author. So I would just like to ask how your experience has been juggling all these different roles, and how has your journey been as an author?
See, the life is a journey, and where you go from one phase to another, but they ultimately piece together. For example, I have done engineering in electronics and then in MTech in computer science. I was able to modernize Delhi Police, Enforcement Directorate. So wherever I went, I was able to use my knowledge of engineering. Prior to Commonwealth Games, I was heading many technical committees in Delhi Police for various projects, like we have command and control system in the Delhi Police, which connects all the CCTV systems in Delhi. So I was heading that technical committee. So that helps. Then when I moved from the police to the enforcement directorate, again, the investigating skills, which I gained in the police, helped me in the enforcement directorate. And meanwhile, I have done the MBA in finance, which also helped in understanding the financial analysis, which was required in the enforcement directorate. And when I started writing the book, the whole experience of my life comes to play in expressing myself, in expressing what has happened during those times. So I would say that life is a journey, and every phase of life, whatever you learn, comes to your aid at some point of time. Nothing gets wasted. Even if you read something, it will help you.
Absolutely. You are an inspiration, and you're right. You've pieced together everything that you've learned all over these years in this book. And it's definitely a very good suggestion to read this book. And this has been published by Rupa Publications. And I'm sure we'll also wait for your next book, which you said that you're writing. And with this, I will move on to interactive round, sir. And we have Mr. Sameer Dutt, who's the founder and CEO of Forensics Guru and president of the Digital Investigators Association. In fact, he's also an author. He wrote Learning Network Forensics, and he's the fellow of Indian Police Foundation. Thank you, Sameer, for joining in, and thank you so much for making this session possible.
Thank you so much, Neeta. And sir, it is a pleasure to be here on this session with you. You are my mentor and my guru, so it's always a great thing to be with your mentor. So, I mean, this is actually, this was a very difficult and a very emotional time. In fact, I remember on the 9th of September, in 2008, I was in Mumbai, and I had a meeting with Mr. Karkare that day, and I came back to the hotel and I was seeing the news, and it came as such a shock, And then sometime after that, then it happened with Karkare Saab himself on the 26/11 incident. And, it drove home the fact that the work that you all do is so dangerous, so critical, and so important to the nation. In fact, it is something that you are, defending the nation from hidden forces and people, who are out to take action in covert ways. So hats off to all of you, sir. And I just wanted to, ask you कि भाई आपने इसके बारे में आपने किताब लिखी, but आपके लाइफ में इतने सारे ऐसे इंसिडेंट्स और हुए होंगे. Other than this, so many deep investigations with a lot of great ideas. So what is next?
Thank you, Sabir, so much. Let me tell the viewers that Sabir is an old friend.
Sir.
He has helped me in investigation of some of the cases. Even in Batla House, I remember going to his Faridabad office, almost sitting with him for a whole day, trying to find out who had sent the email from a cyber cafe from Shakarpur. And I'm thankful to you for that.
Yes, sir.
The question you asked, yes, I will be writing some more books about particularly about my experience in Special Cell, because that was a time where we handled a number of terror-related cases. And also, if you remember, there were 42 blasts around Delhi and around in 97. So I would be writing about that, how the investigation was done in that period and how we got the Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorists from all over the country.
Wonderful, sir.
Anything else, Samir, you would like to ask, sir?
I also wanted to, sir, ask you, if you recall, there was so much negative publicity, and at that time, we MC Sharma Saab ke, that this was a fake encounter and things like that, and we all knew it was not true and we were feeling so bad. So how would the family be feeling at that time, sir? How did you handle that?
See, I mentioned it in my book. See, it's a really very painful for the family. So I went to meet his wife, Maya Sharma, with my wife, Renuka. And when I reached his house, he raised this question to me. He said, people are talking about it is a fake encounter and all that. What do you have to say about it? I asked first question, do you trust me? So she told me that late Mohan Chand Sharma had told him that if there is any problem, anytime you can talk to sir, he will be able to help. So she told me that she trusts me. Then I told her that whatever I am saying is true. All these are fake news. And one can see the tension evaporating from her face. She believed in that. Otherwise, yes, it is very, very difficult and very painful for the family.
Thank you, Samir, for your question. Next is Dia.
Hi, sir. It's so good to listen to you. I just wanted to ask, have you ever been inspired by any author or by their style? And what is the main thing that motivates you to write? Also, do you think that the movie did justice to the story?
See, movies are made for certain other purposes. They have certain commercial angle attached to it. Therefore, it was very important to bring out all the facts, what happened during that time before the public. And that is the reason I wrote this book. See, I used to read some detective novels of Robert Ludlum. So that was very inspiring, the way he writes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dia. So we have one question from Mr. Sanjay Chaudhary. He says that how do you assess the preparedness of the government in handling the farmers' agitation?
See, it's a question of negotiation.
Yes.
And government is doing its part in the negotiation. And let's see what happens in the future.
Will you like to say something about the book? Some of your last words, which we can cherish forever.
I have divided the books, if somebody when reads in three parts. The first part is about the explosions, the investigation, and the encounter. Second part is about the controversies raised. and how the controversies were settled, how the inquiry was done by the National Human Rights Commission, High Court and Supreme Court. And the last part is about the Indian Mujahideen. And in that I had tried to explain why Indian Mujahideen came into being. See, after 9/11, the world over, there was a decision and pressure on the terrorism. Any country supporting terrorism is found to be at fault. There was a financial action task force which would take action against those countries. So Pakistan wanted to use the Indians in terrorism. Prior to that, they were using the Pak origin people in terrorism in India. So they changed their strategy. And I have explained all that, how did they change their strategy and how the Indian Mujahideen was born, who were the players, how Pakistan was supporting it, how their finances came into being, and ultimately how the Batla House encounter proved to be beginning of the end of the Indian Mujahideen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Samir.
Many wishes for your second book.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Thank you, everyone. And I think this was very enlightening. I'm sure all of you want to go back and read this book, specifically if you want a true, a true detailing of whatever happened on that day. So thank you so much for joining in, and we'll have this the video recording of this session out on our YouTube channel soon, so you can view it there. And thank you so much for your constant support.